Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Her Hoop Stats podcast. I am Brittany Carper, joined this morning by Richard Cohen. It's our first solo show together. Richard, how are you doing?
Yeah, not so bad. I think we can manage to cope without a third wheel this time. We should be okay.
I hope so. So I guess let's just jump right in. Obviously a playoff preview kind of last night with the Aces and Dreams squaring off. Aces pulled out the 81-75 win. We'll touch on A'ja Wilson in a minute because she's playing at a otherworldly level, which I didn't know if that was possible, but just kind of what your thoughts were from the game, and then we can really dive into A'ja in a little bit.
I mean, a lot of the game was really close. Both teams looked evenly matched, like you would expect for teams that sort of second and third in the standings fighting for the same playoff spot. And then there was just that stretch at the last few minutes of the third quarter where A'ja kicked it off by hitting a couple of threes, and then Atlanta kind of spiraled just for a couple of minutes. They felt like they dropped out of the game. They kind of lost their composure, and Vegas suddenly looked like the adults in the room, was how I phrased it. They looked like the team that had been there before, and Atlanta looked like the team that was still learning how to play on this kind of level. And they never really got back it. I mean, they got close-ish in the fourth, but it was that stretch that ended up winning the game for Vegas.
Yeah, it was tied, I think 48-48, and
Yep.
then the Aces finished that third quarter on a 13-0 run. And like you touched on, I thought the Dream just kind of, they didn't take great shots. They kind of got caught up in that moment where you could tell which team has had the playoff pressure and understands the moment they're in, and the Dream on the other side just kind of struggled to really get any good looks. And maybe that's a little bit of a credit to the Aces defense there, but just certainly a night where we talked a lot about the Dream being able to play kind of different ways, but their struggles from the 3-point line last night, I thought, was really kind of what did them in. I think they finished, I had 4 of 24, and one of those
Yep.
was a late three. So how important is that for them to learn how to play without making the three going forward?
I mean, it should be important, but I think ultimately they're going to live or die by it. I mean, it's how they play, and when two of your key scorers are Rhyne Howard and Alicia Gray, you have to make enough to survive. I mean, the fact that they were still in this game down the stretch when Howard was 7 of 22, Gray was 6 of 17, and between them they were 3 of 17 from three is, I mean, you can argue that's a positive sign that they managed to stick around in this game despite barely hitting from outside all night long. Howard hit nothing, basically. It's going to be hard for them to win games against good teams when their two perimeter scorers play like that, because Brianna Jones had a good game inside. Griner didn't, backing her up, but Jones provided what they needed in there. And then, you would just hope that sort of on an average night rather than a bad night, you get a little more than that from Gray or Howard, and you win that game because it was close enough that a little difference could have made the edge.
And one last thing before we get into A'ja Wilson, but with these two teams, so now on the season, the Aces are 3-0 and potentially a 2-3 matchup in the playoffs. What do you think psychologically, or even scheme wise, Atlanta would kind of need to do differently? The first game, I think, was a 15-point game. They lost the 2-point game last week, and then this one, like you said, was close throughout. But what changes do you think the Dream would make, or do you think they just kind of stick to what they've done against the Aces and just hope for a better shooting result?
I mean, the last two games they played each other twice just recently. I do think the chess match between Smesco and Becky Hammond has been interesting. We've seen sort of lineups battling with each other where one team makes a move and then the other coach counters. Vegas are doing something interesting where A'ja Wilson will often sort of start on a guard so that there's a pre-switch for if they try and run a pick and roll with a, or she can also, because they're not that scared of someone like Maya Caldwell, she can play off and help a lot elsewhere. And it kind of throws Atlanta a little bit because you're not quite used to what's coming. Vegas are throwing different things at them, and they're comfortable enough now with how they're playing defense that they can do different things to come at Atlanta. What Atlanta do to counter that? It would be interesting in a playoff series where you've got like 5 games and each coach gets to counter one game to the next. What
Hmm.
different things Atlanta come at them with, because they've got fewer variations, I think, in what they can do, what they're comfortable doing, because a lot of their offense revolves around their scorers on the perimeter and throwing it inside to Brianna Jones. Once you go away from those sort of two key options, where do you go next? And yeah, I think Vegas have more variety they can try at this point. Um, Atlanta basically use Hillman on Asia Wilson and no one else. Even when they're going to different kinds of lineups, in the last few minutes, we saw they were sticking with Hillman on Wilson, and that left Brianna Jones guarding first Kirsten Bell, and then when when Hammond countered that, because they were basically ignoring Bell the same way people used to ignore Kia Stokes, they put
Hmm.
Evans in for Bell, and that left basically Jones with no one to guard, and then Jewel Lloyd hits the big three over Jones's arms. So yeah, I think they'll go away from that. They've got tape now from this game and the last one, and yeah, it'll be interesting to see if they run into each other again, what Smesco comes up with to counter those kind of options.
Yeah, certainly some, chess being played there. I thought it was a really, from the Aces standpoint, like you said, the adults in the room. So let's just touch on Asia Wilson. 34 points, 9 rebounds, 4 blocks. It was her 35th career 30-point game in the W. She is second only to Diana Taurasi, who I believe had 54 games of 30 plus points. She has done that in 263 career games. So, just what are your general thoughts on Asia Wilson's play over the last, especially the 12-game win streak by the Aces?
It's it's hard to come up with superlatives that haven't already been said. Yeah, she's unguardable. And at times, like we said, that was the difference last night. That Alicia Gray this season has played great. She's been a star. There's people talking about her in MVP considerations, understandably. But Asia Wilson's a superstar. I think there's a line there between star and superstar that sometimes people don't like me drawing because they don't like the people that they only consider a star. But yeah, you can throw Wilson the ball and say, "Go get us a bucket," and it works. There's not a lot that teams can do to counter her. You can throw her the ball and just say, "Go score for us," and it's a wonderful option to have. I think to a certain extent that's what Minnesota and Las Vegas have, arguably over the entire league, unless you're going to throw in Alyssa Thomas as someone who can create it, not necessarily for herself in the same way. In that Vegas have Wilson and Minnesota have Fee, and they can just say, "Go produce for us," and those players get them over the line.
Yeah, I think that is the big separator on both of those teams, but certainly the Aces over this stretch. And I think when she has elevated really her play, which seems weird to say because she's always at a very high level, but it has allowed everyone on that roster, I think, to play at a higher level. And you saw the lid kind of came off the basket when she made those 2 threes. And then all of a sudden it was like, the basket looked huge for Jewel Lloyd. She hits those 2 threes. She hits one in the fourth, pretty big dagger threes. So, what do you think? Like the luxury of playing with a bona fide superstar is for those players, compared to like kind of what you said, just a star on another team, and that's not taking away from a player like Alicia Gray, but how beneficial is that for a team like the Aces, even though they are an experienced team?
I mean, it's huge. I thought there was one play last night where I made a particular note of it, where Chelsea Gray was running pick and roll with Wilson, and they came off it. Wilson rolled in a normal way, but the help didn't come to Gray like it normally would on regular pick and roll because they were so petrified of Wilson because they're scared to leave her, and therefore the help didn't roll. So Gray had a layup in a way that you don't normally see on that kind of basic play because the help can go whether it's from a third player or from the player sagging off the post setting the screen. And yeah, it creates an enormous amount of space and enormous amount of help for the teammates because no one's ever going to leave her. And most of the time, there's at least 1.5 players guarding her, if not two, on any given play. So somebody's open, somebody's in more space than they would be against a normal lineup. And yeah, that's the effect. That's what people have been talking about for years as gravity, and the sort of the gravity that someone like Steph Curry has in the NBA. Yeah, you see the same sort of thing. People lean towards Wilson. It creates space for everyone else.
Yeah, my final takeaway from that game, and I'm not sure if you saw this or not, but Rhyne Howard in the post game made some comments about the crowd, chanting MVP, and how they were just doing it the prior game for her teammate Alicia Gray, and what are your thoughts on that? And certainly, again, in a matchup where they could see them in the playoffs. How do you think that resonates with fans? I think I guess my kind of take from it is a league where I think obviously is still growing in terms of team and total team support, where you've seen a lot of specific player support, and so just kind of touch on just that comment in general, and your thoughts about that going forward with being an opponent and hearing an MVP chat for an opponent.
Yeah, I mean, I saw the clips as well. That I mean, you absolutely could hear the MVP chants for Wilson, which is you can understand why Howard was slightly upset by that, hearing that in your own arena for a road player. When you've got someone who's in the conversation on your own team as well. So yeah, and as Howard pointed out, players who went to the same school. So if you support South Carolina, then you've got a South Carolina player who you can support who's on the Dream anyway. You don't have to switch to Wilson. I understand her frustration. I don't necessarily think coming out in the press conference and talking about it is going to help the situation particularly because it comes off as criticizing your own fans, and home fans don't tend to particularly like that. I don't know whether the reaction will be, okay, we're going to support our team even more, or whether it'll be, why are you telling us what to do? We've paid the money, we bought the tickets, we can come in and do what we want. If we want to chant for Asia, then that's all right. Yeah, Atlanta's always been kind of a strange home crowd anyway. There was only 3,500 there last night for a top of the standings clash
Mhm.
in what is a fairly small arena anyway. You wonder what's going to happen with that area and that franchise going forward now that we've got teams filling out like arenas that hold 10 to 20,000. And yeah, this is a different kind of league now that's looking to bigger arenas and bigger fan bases and want more than 3,500 coming in the door for a kind of big game.
Yeah, certainly. I think that's something that will be looked at going forward. Like you said, the growth, and just you see teams around the league filling arenas on a nightly basis. And so, certainly, like you said, there wasn't a lot of fans there, but to hear that on your home court, it was just an interesting tidbit. So, on the flip side of that, the other game played last night was from two teams that are out of playoff contention, completely eliminated in the Sun and the Wings. And so we're going to kind of dive in. I know yesterday Cindy and Helen kind of talked a little bit about the Sun, but what are your general takeaways, I guess, just now coming down the stretch about the Sun and the Wings, like the base they've had going forward, kind of where you see both of these franchises headed here in the future?
I think if you're a fan of either of these teams, there are positive things to see in recent weeks, in that you're seeing the young players step up and show what they can do. I mean, Layla Lacan has been a delight to watch since she showed up in Connecticut, and the numbers suggest a, a revolutionized team since she showed up. Basically, this is an average team since Lacan arrived. Whereas if you look at their like league long, season long stats, they're threatening the top 10, top 15 worst teams of all time in the WNBA. But yeah, with Lacan, with Rivers, with Morrow, there's been flashes from people. Even Nelson Adoda hasn't had the greatest run in recent weeks, but she's still hope for the future as well. Yeah, they've been a good defensive team lately, and a lot of that has been their youth. So there's hope there. And Dallas, everyone's injured, but again, the players that are stepping up within that injury situation, you've had good moments from Soda. Isaiah James had a good game last night. Grace Berger's looked good since coming in. Maddie Siegrist has been scoring at will since she came back from the most recent injury. So, yeah, I think there's signs of hope. I think neither of these teams are good yet, but there are things for like the fans to cling on to. I think there are signs.
Yeah, certainly. Last night, the Wings playing without Paige Beckers, I think you really got to see kind of what Isaiah James certainly can do, and like you said, Berger Soder before she got hurt. But for those both of those teams, like what do you see would be the major need in the draft? If you had both of their picks, who do you think would complement their core the best? That could be coming out in the 2026 draft.
I always admit that my knowledge of college basketball in the US is limited. I start tuning in once it's possible to over here. But obviously,
Okay.
I'm aware of the superstars and the people that we've been watching in recent years. People like
Hmm.
Flo J. Johnson, people like Olivia Miles. Our fam is someone you're going to hear about a lot from Spain, who's at 19 and going to be next year's Malonga when
Okay.
people start talking about the 26 draft. Um, but given what's already on the rosters, I look more at types of players that someone will be looking for rather than sort of
Hmm.
the exact player. I mean Connecticut needs someone inside because Anissa Morrow is barely 6 feet tall on a good day. Tina Charles is not going to be there the next time Connecticut have a good team, and I, Aaliyah Edwards and Olivia Nelson Ododa are already backups on this team, and whether they're going to be starters going forward, who knows? I would imagine they're looking for someone to hold down the paint long term. They need a mainstay inside. Dallas, partly it depends on what they're going to do with Enrique, because where they go going forward depends on what the framework of this team already is. They've already leaned young. I like the way that Kurt Miller has taken this roster young already, and it already looks like Paige Becker's his team. But alongside that, who they need, again, they may well be looking inside. It depends on how convinced they are that people like Soda are going to be sort of stepping up and becoming more than what they already are. But yeah, I would they want someone to go alongside. But when you're right at the top of the draft, my advice is always take the best player that you think is available, basically, and you figure the rest out later. They'll If the players are good enough, they'll fit together regardless.
Yeah, I think just from a quick look at both of those franchises, inside play a dominant player, which certainly if you're in top of the draft, if there's someone available like a Lauren Betts or, someone overseas that can come in and really anchor the inside for years to come, that's such a luxury. But I agree with you. After that, it's kind of the best available, right? Because you're trying to create a team where you have the five best players possible out there. And so certainly I think both of those teams would benefit from an inside player, but the best available after that. All right, switching gears one more time, maybe twice here. now down to, I think the Aces only have 4 games left, and then that 3-4-5, it's 6-7-6 if I've done my math right. So Aces, Dream, Mercury, and Liberty all fighting, for that 2 through 5 spot. Give me kind of what your takes are, what they have left, who you think kind of comes out of that, and where you see them.
Well, after last night, it's hard to see Vegas as anything other than the favourite to finish second, given how they've played in the last few weeks. Um, I mean, no one's catching Minnesota, but we can ignore, I think, the number 1 seed. But after that, it looks like, yeah, a 4-way battle for 2 to 5, unless something unexpected happens and Indiana go on a surge. I think Vegas have to be considered the favourites, and then after that, I think if you're New York, you probably prioritize getting healthy rather than wins. I think they're going to be trying to get themselves together as much as trying to win games. I think they'll live with wherever they finish and back themselves to win on the road against whoever they need to play. But they may well win games anyway. And while doing that, especially with Brianna Stewart back, we've seen how much of a difference that makes to them. Yeah, so yeah, I like Vegas in second, and after that, toss a coin between the remaining options.
Yeah, kind of looking, I think the Dream, they had 6 games left. So they are home against Dallas, and then they're at
Yeah.
Connecticut, then home LA, home LA, home Connecticut, at Connecticut. So again, scheduling wizards of the WNBA, they get Connecticut 3 times over the last couple weeks here. So certainly I think
Not a playoff team in the entire stretch. Yeah.
yeah, so, I think obviously those games are going to be extremely important for the Sparks, who right now are kind of on the outside looking in, fighting for that, but both of those are at home for the Dream. So I think just from, a quick glance, the Dream certainly seem to be kind of in that driver's seat for that 3 seed, I would say, because the Aces only have 4 left, and they're home Minnesota, home Chicago, Chicago at LA. So I think, like you said, they kind of have locked into that 2 seed given how they played. And then the Mercury and the Liberty, I think that'll be interesting. Like you said, the Liberty certainly wanting to be fully healthy, but if you're in a 3-game playoff, with the Mercury, and you're playing 2 of those on the road, you might be looking at that a little differently. So I think that will be really interesting to see if they choose to kind of get fully healthy, or if they're 80-90%. Certainly at this point of the season, a lot of players are dealing with some injuries, and having to play through that. But if you're, Mercury, I think Chicago, New York, Indiana at home, then they're at Washington, at Connecticut, home LA, at Dallas. So just kind of looking at the Mercury and Liberty, who would you kind of think comes out in that, emerges, maybe catching the 3, but most likely in the 4 spot?
Got a game against each other in a few days as well, which is interesting to see how that comes out. I mean, whoever comes out on top of that will probably think that they can then make a run towards the end of the season, especially with I mean, again, New York's remaining games after that are all against teams lower down the standings. So I think they'll probably think they can, especially again with Stewart back. UNESCO only missed 1 game in the end. They've got most of their roster intact now. So I think maybe New York I would pick as the favourite, but I don't think there's a lot in it, and that either it could easily end up tied. And right now the tiebreaker is Phoenix are 2-1. So if New
Hmm.
York managed to win that last one, it would tie it up. If Phoenix win that game, which is in Phoenix, so yeah, if they win that and take the tiebreak, then yeah, I guess then they become the clear favorite for at least the 4th. And yeah, you wonder if either team will try not to give anything away in that game, thinking that that could be the 4-5 matchup, and that they're going to be playing each other in a series in a couple of weeks after that. We'll see what happens.
Yeah, certainly exciting games coming down the 2 through 5 seed, and then the 6 through 10 are all, kind of right there too. I think the Indiana Fever's performance the other night certainly gives them some momentum. They've had such a rash of injuries at the guard position and have seemingly been able to put in piece after piece and finally find their footing. So what do you kind of see? How do you see that shaking out? Who do you think gets in? Gus, kind of give me your takes on those last remaining playoff spots.
I mean, I said the same thing to Christy last week that I think Indiana, Golden State, and Seattle will probably be the last three playoff teams where they are right now because LA have put in this fun, exciting run, but I don't think they quite have enough to drag their way back. Seattle are better than their record, as I think a lot of us have said so many times at this point that they keep losing all of these close games, which if the season was long enough would eventually even out. And but it's probably not going to have time to. But I think they're still good enough to hold on to that spot. The problem is they're not playing well enough to actually do anything once they get there. Unfortunately, they're going to have to really flip a switch to be able to do anything against any of those top teams in the first round. Yeah, I think Washington have dropped off since the Sykes trade. Basically, that they're still a really entertaining team to watch, but the wins haven't been there, and I don't think LA quite have enough to catch any of the remaining three.
Yeah, I certainly agree. I think the standings will probably shake out like they are. Golden State does have a tough end
Mm.
to their season, so but they do have I think 5 at home, which is big for them, and certainly they have been just such an incredible story this year and a franchise that's on the brink of making the playoffs. I for a first year expansion franchise, I think that's I'll bring it to my last kind of final thing here because we touched just briefly yesterday about what we wanted to talk about, and we're not going to get fully into the awards race, but I know they talked about it yesterday too. If you had an MVP vote, now I know we might be a little tainted from last night's performance of Asia Wilson, but what would kind of what who is your pick at this point?
I think I think it's probably still Collier, even with the number of games she's missed, because I think it's close enough that the tie goes to the player you want that that you most remember from a season. That you think back to the year and you think, who was who is my memory tinted by from that one year? Who do I think of when I think of the 2025 season? And I think that's still Collier, and I think it's close enough that despite missing 10 games, I would go that way. But it's incredibly close, and I would not blame you for voting for Thomas or Wilson. Anyone other than those three, I might question a little.
Yeah, those 3 have stood out to me over the course of this season, all for their separate reasons. Most notably, I mean, Alyssa Thomas is on a tear, averaging almost a triple double, which is so impressive. But Helen has talked about this a couple times too. It's just not as eye popping because she's not statistically putting up 20, 30 point games. It's just that she is really good in every category that matters. And so, to the basketball lovers like me and you, we appreciate what she is doing night in and night out because it really is unheard of at a professional level to be that good in every statistical category like she is. And then Asia Wilson over the last couple weeks, of course, but just as a season, she has carried that team and franchise. But I'm with you. I was on Collier kind of from the beginning of this year, and I know she's being. I feel like a little unfairly penalized because her team has done well without her. But I think she comes back the other night, and you're reminded how good of a basketball player she is. And so to me, like you said, she's the player that I'm taking away from this year. I mean, she was on a 50, 40, 90 clip. I'm not sure. I haven't gone back and looked at the numbers, how close she is to that, but that's incredible too. And so I think, again, we're really lucky that all three of these players are playing at such an elite level. All of their teams are, close to the top of the standings. But I think Collier is just a separator, certainly just because Minnesota is too just far and away the best team this year. And I think, again, we talked a little bit too with Cheryl Reeve, just because you're good and it's expected, you shouldn't be, penalized because of that. And so that was kind of my take on it.
I mean, we definitely see that with Coach of the Year in particular, that it generally goes to the person who outperforms preseason expectations rather than the one who wins the most games a lot of the time, which is understandable. But still, yeah, that has to be frustrating if you're just incredibly good and you just do it year after year and everyone gets used to it and starts to get bored and gives all the awards to everyone else. Yeah, on Alyssa Thomas, I wanted to touch on that as well. That yeah, she does everything. I mean, we don't see point centers. I mean, we've gotten used to it with Jokic in the NBA as well to a certain extent as a hub, and she runs everything. She does everything that Phoenix needs. She's come in. She is their offense, as in everything goes through her. She creates everything for the rest of the team. Everything sort of runs through her as the hub of what's happening. And yeah, and the numbers are there. The scoring isn't quite there compared to someone like Wilson and Collier, but her scoring is up on the last year or two in Connecticut because that's what Phoenix needed from her, and she's produced it. She's produced it efficiently. She's scoring at 54% from the field. It's far and away her highest field goal percentage of her career, on top of the 9 rebounds, 9 assists. Yeah, I mean, if you want to vote for Alyssa Thomas for MVP, I don't blame you. I did it a couple of years ago with my fake vote, and yeah, she didn't win it then. If she, yeah, I'm fine with it. That works too.
Yeah, I don't think we can go wrong, with any three of those. And I know certainly we are in for a treat over the next couple of weeks to finish this incredible season. So, with that, I look forward to the weekend games. Thank you for joining me. You can obviously catch us on all the socials. Make sure you check out any of women's basketball news on herhoopstats.com. And we hope you have a great day.